Hi everyone, my name is Lauren and welcome to my final presentation for Education 487, Curriculum and Strategies for Children with Special Needs. So here's a little bit about me. I am a second-year student at the University of Laverne, majoring in Educational Studies, concentrating in Spanish and minoring in Child Development. I'm also very involved on campus and in various organizations such as ASULV and the National Society of Leadership and Success. I am also part of the women's water polo team at the University of Laverne. So in our class, we use the building blocks framework, which is the foundation of any special education class, and there's 4 essential components, which include high-quality early childhood programs such as Head Start, curriculum modifications and adaptations, embedded learning opportunities, and explicit child-focused instructional strategies. So, in special education, curriculum modifications and adaptations are used a lot, which are a change to the ongoing classroom activity in order to increase a child's participation in routines. Some of which include environmental support, material adaptations, activity simplification, child preference, special equipment, adult support, peer support, invisible support, and sensory support. The idea of promoting participation, engagement, and learning by altering the physical, social, and temporal environment is called environmental support. And the purpose of environmental support is to be able to enhance the learning environment in order to support the child based off of their own needs. An example of modifying the environment would be placing child-sized furniture side by side in the classroom to promote peer interaction. So the next curriculum modification and adaptation are material adaptations, which are materials that are modified so children can work as much as possible by themselves. And the purpose of this is to promote positive signs of growth in learning and also promote independence. So some common examples would be using tabletop easels or page turners or items such as loop scissors or large glue in order to increase motivation. Now, at the book fluffer assignment that we had to do, as we can see here, by using a page turner or a book fluffer in the classroom, it allows students to be able to excel independently and show signs of growth in physical, cognitive, social, emotional, behavioral, and social development. So as you can see here to the right, I used post-it flags on the book The Pigeon Has to Go to School as a page turner for students to use when reading a book. So the next curriculum modification is activity simplifications, which has to do with breaking down a complicated task into smaller parts or by reducing the number of steps in a task. And the purpose of this is to make things easier for children to use, or, for example, using a process chart to give visual information for steps in different activities. The next thing we are going to discuss are special equipment, which has to do with adaptive devices that allow a child to participate or increase the child's level of participation. The purpose of using special or adaptive materials in the classroom is to allow children to feel more comfortable participating by using adaptive devices. Now, the most common example would be using rift-in chairs with built-up sides to support the child in the sitting position of a chair and promote better posture, which we can see in the photo here with just the chair, and the photo here with the teacher helping out the child who's sitting in a rift-in chair. So the next curriculum modification we're going to discuss are child preferences, which have to do with promoting multiple opportunities and having children take advantage of this. Now, the most common thing for child preference is to integrate their preferences into an activity. So the purpose of child preference is to be able to promote children engaging in activities by having as many opportunities as possible, and also making sure to create more advantages for children who may not want to participate in certain activities by integrating in their own interests. The next curriculum modification is the process of having an adult intervene to support participation and learning of the child, which is also known as adult support. Now, the purpose of adult support is to be able to directly support the child's effort through interaction and engagement. So, for example, during snack time, when a child is wanting juice, have the child pour in the juice into the cup while you're helping hold the cup and helping him or her pour the juice. The next curriculum modification and adaptation is peer support. By utilizing peers in the classroom, it allows children to learn important objectives, which is also known as peer support. Now, the purpose of peer support is to encourage meaningful learning by using classmates or peers as models. So a good example of this would be using a buddy table, which would allow several opportunities for peer support and modeling. So the penultimate curriculum modification discussed in this presentation is invisible support, which has to do with purposely arranging naturally occurring events within one activity. The main purpose of invisible support is to encourage inclusion. For example, try using a toy that structures turn-taking. So for example, as you can see with the picture to the right, the game, called Monkeying Around, takes precedent of an activity that's focusing on turn-taking. Like you could use the different colored monkeys and say that once this color monkey goes on, the person with this color monkey can go next. Lastly, the last curriculum modification and adaptation is sensory support, which is the idea of taking in information through all of the senses, which include tactile, auditory, vestibular, sight, olfactory, and gustatory, and how to respond in certain environments. Now, the purpose of sensory support is to be able to support the child through their social, emotional, and cognitive development. A good example of using sensory support in the classroom is for people who are very sensitive to touch to use longer paint brushes when painting to avoid a mess in the art center. So the next thing we are going to discuss are learning centers and how to implement curriculum modifications. So there are 7 different types of learning centers, which include art center, block center, dramatic play, sensory table, book corner or a library, computer center, and manipulative centers. In the following slides, there will be an example curriculum modifications in 2 learning centers. So for an arts center, there are many curriculum modifications and adaptations that can be used, some of which include sensory support, material adaptation, environmental support, and activity simplification. A great example of material adaptation would be to construct a tabletop easel out of cardboard and secure the paper with tape or binder clips, which we can see to the photo to the right. A second example could be seen in the dramatic play area, which the best curriculum modification and adaptation you could use are child preferences. A great example would be if a child's not wanting to participate in sociodramatic play, you could add their own interests. So for example, if playing doctor or veterinarian, integrate the child's favorite household animal to pique interest. The next section will be focusing on planned activities. One of the first planned activities discussed in this class was circle time, which offers an opportunity for children to come together and develop a sense of belonging. It should allow children to have many opportunities with participating. Another type of planned activity has to do with small groups. Small groups are adult-initiated activities that have pre-planned goals that usually meet with the same group of children frequently to investigate, explore, and learn new skills. As we can see here with the photo to the right, the children are outside playing with puzzle pieces and are working together to try and build a puzzle with the help of the teacher. The next planned activity is cooking, and cooking increases the learning opportunities in the classroom while learning about topics such as food preparation and nutrition. The next planned activity is outdoor time, which can be viewed as an extension of the classroom through creating new learning experiences for the children, which we can see with this photo to the right. We see the children in a sandbox all playing together. The last planned activity that we will be talking about is music and movement. Music and movement is often incorporated in circle times, choice times in music centers, or through scheduled times throughout the day. As you can see in the photo to the right, the children are playing with boom whackers, which are a popular form of playing music in the classroom. The next thing we are going to discuss are embedded learning opportunities. Embedded learning opportunities are planned activities and routines in the classroom that instructors use to increase and enhance the child's learning. Now, the goal of embedded learning opportunities is to ensure that students understand concepts and skills as well as creating short intentional teaching strategies during activities or routines. A great example of embedded learning opportunities would be encouraging the child to vocalize or gesture to request certain objects in a manipulative center. The next thing we are going to discuss are child-focused instructional strategies. Child-focused instruction has to do with early childhood education instructors identifying learning opportunities that are matched to a child's individual objectives. It also provides planned, consistent, systematic instruction for teachers to teach specific skills, behaviors, or concepts. A great example of child-focused instruction can be seen in our project that we had to do on ABC instructional interaction. So during a farm theme unit, The target behavior is for Durrell to move in a circle holding hands with peers. For the antecedent, the instruction is to have a circle time and say to the student, let's play with some animals during circle time. The prompt would have to be a physical prompt, such as have the child hold the arm of the stuffed animal and have the person next to him holding the other arm. Then have them move around in a circle. So the target behavior from the instructions are for Durrell to move in a circle holding hands with peers. The C in the ABC instructional interaction is the consequence. The consequence should be positively based. So the correct type of consequence is a reinforcement, which would be praising the child for joining circle time and having a reward system. For example, for every time Durrell participates, he would get a star. Once Durrell has 5 stars, he can either get a toy car or a stuffed animal as a prize. The incorrect method of consequence would be corrective feedback, and this would be where the teacher would go with the child to circle time and hold his stuffed animal with him in circle time. Something else to note is the differentiated farm unit, where we had to create IEPs based off of descriptions of children and activities provided, and providing curriculum modifications or adaptations that could be used with each particular child. So in these next few slides, here's a highlight of an activity that the child may have trouble with, followed by the curriculum modification and the modification types. So for one of the activities, students would be put into small groups and they would have to grab different animals and count their feet. They would have 2 bins, one labeled 2 and one labeled 4, and they would have to put the animal in the correct bin. So by looking at this IEP, Durrell's challenge would be having difficulty playing and communicating with others. So curriculum modification or adaptation you could do is make sure that some of Durrell's favorite toys are included in the group activities. You could also use conversation cards to ensure that Durrell is creating conversation amongst his peers. The modification types seen here are activity simplification, peer support, and child preferences. Next up we have Tyler. So for activity 3, the class would be holding hands while moving around in a circle with someone in the middle as the farmer. As the music is playing, students will go into the middle of the circle until there's only one person left. So for the student challenge, the music may be too loud for Tyler, which could cause him to withdraw. And another thing to note is that the student might have difficulty understanding everything he's hearing because of his disability. Now, a curriculum modification or adaptation you could use is having the music being played through YouTube where there's closed captioning. Since Tyler is a pretty strong reader, you could implement that and have the music in a space that's not as loud. Another idea could be that you're implementing this activity in a bigger space where there wouldn't be any external interferences. Or you could just have the teacher or class read the lyrics of the song together instead of constantly listening to it, because Tyler is not really a fan of music. And the modification types here are sensory support and activity simplification. The last child we have is Angie, and for Angie, the one I'm going to highlight is activity 2, which pretty much had to do with the children shucking a piece of corn, putting paint on the corn, and then rolling it on a piece of paper. Now, with Angie, her challenge would be she would have difficulty standing up to paint since she is dealing with cerebral palsy. Now, a good example of a curriculum modification or adaptation would be to use a tabletop easel for Angie, or have a piece of cardboard folded into a triangle and securing the paper with binder clips. Another option is implementing environmental support by having a long strip of butcher paper along the floor and having everyone paint together. Now, since the corn does have to be shucked, it would be better for the teacher to do it, since Angie does have difficulty picking up and holding certain objects. Now, some of the modification types touched in this IEP include environmental support, material adaptation, activity simplification, and adult support. Lastly, we have family professional partnerships. Family professional partnerships is the relationship between the instructor and the parents, more specifically the child's whole family. Now, great characteristics of family professional partnerships include trust, basic communication skills, effective teaching skills of children, and it's also important to note that you need to consider the relationship with the whole family and not just the child. And it's important to implement practices for a foundation of trust, which include enhanced communication, high expectations, respect, commitment, equality, and advocacy. Here are my references for this slideshow. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your semester.